Hello everyone, James here to walk through Advanced Scenario 7 on page 81. Our taxpayers are Vincent and Faith Hunter. They have chosen to file a joint return. They have a daughter, Hope, in college, and there are a number of things that we're going to have to do in this return, so let's get started. First, we're going to log into the practice lab, and if you haven't done this return already, you're going to select Start a New 2024 Return and enter Vincent's Social Security number. Then click the Start Return button at the bottom, and that will take you in to the filing status screen where you can choose their filing status. Now, I already prepared this return, so I'm going to go in here and walk through it. So we know that their filing status is married filing jointly. The next thing we need to do is take a look at the intake form, the next couple of pages in the test book there, and we need to enter all of their personal information on this screen. So we have Vincent's name and date of birth. A little further down, we see that they checked off that box to contribute $3 to the presidential election campaign fund. So we'll check that off and scroll down a bit, put in Faith's name and birth date and social security number. Then further down, we'll put in their address and phone number. That's everything we have to put in there. We don't need to put their email address in. It's not required. So moving on, there's one more item here. We have to put in their daughter's information on the dependent screen. And so here we will enter Hope's name and her birth date, social security number. We'll check off that she is a U.S. citizen, that she is the daughter, and that she lived in the home for 12 months. And one more thing, she was over 18 and a full-time student at an eligible educational institution. So we will check that box, and that will be everything we need to do for the personal information. So if we continue on to the W-2 on page 87, I'm just going to say a couple things about this. Since we have a joint return, we need to tell TaxSlayer whose W-2 this is. It's Vincent's, the taxpayer. Then we enter in, the employer ID number, and that will cause the employer's name and address to autofill. And we have to be careful when entering the numbers in boxes 1 through 6. In this case, the income in box 1 is $1,000 less than the income in boxes 3 and 5. So it will autofill. As soon as you put a number in box 1, just go into boxes 3 and 5 and correct those numbers. The only thing else we have on this W-2 is a code D in box 12 with $1,000. That's some type of retirement plan that Vincent contributed to. And also in box 13, the retirement plan box is checked. So those are all of the things we need to do here in this W-2. There's also state information at the bottom. We don't need to do the state return. Well, actually we can't because it's not enabled in the TaxSlayer practice lab at the moment. But normally we will put in the state wages and the income tax withheld and the employer's state ID number. So let's move ahead and do the more complicated form, which is the 1099-R. And you can find this on the income section. It's the 4th item down. Under IRA pensions distributions, the first item here, add or edit a 1099-R. And it will take you in to this screen. Now, we're going to have to do a little extra work with this one, because if you look at the 1099-R, at the bottom of page 87, you will see that there is an amount in box 1, but there is no amount in box 2A. So we don't know how much of that $20,000 gross distribution is taxable. We have to tell TaxSlayer a couple extra pieces of information so that that amount can calculate. And the way that we do that is we click right below box 1, and it will take us into what's known as the simplified method worksheet. And let me go back in here since I already did this once. And we're going to have to supply a few pieces of information. We already know what the gross distribution amount is. We put that in box 1. The next thing it's asking us for is the plan cost at the annuity start date. So from the interview notes, we know that Faith retired in 2021 and started receiving her pension on November 1st of 2021. So that's going to be the annuity start date. In box 9B of the Form 1099-R, we see an amount of $15,000. That is what goes here. That is what she has invested in this plan. And she gets to recover that amount tax-free over the period of time that she's receiving these distributions. So the software is going to calculate an amount to exclude, so she will not be fully taxed on that $20,100. Further down, we know from the interview notes that this is a joint and survivor annuity. So we need to check this box that you see here. And new for this year in TaxSlayer, it's automatically calculating their combined ages at the annuity start date. So if you calculate Vincent and Faith's age on November 1st, 2021, and add those together, you get this number here, 123. And the only other thing we need, well, two more things. She received distributions for all 12 months of 2024. And we know from the interview notes that she previously recovered $1,259 of the cost of the plan. That's the third bullet point down in the interview notes. So once we get all of that in, TaxSlayer will calculate the taxable amount of her pension and put that in box 2A. So further down, make sure you get the federal income tax in box 4. We don't always see federal income tax withholding on these forms, but when you do, be sure to include that. And this was a normal distribution. That's what the 7 means in box 7. So remember to put that in. And of course, in box 9B, we have $15,000. That is all the information we need to enter on this form, and we can just continue on. You will see this question, did you make an early withdrawal from a retirement account due to a qualified disaster? The answer is usually no, because qualified disaster, this is a federally declared disaster area, like a hurricane, tornado, or the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment, that sort of thing. We haven't had any federally declared disasters in our area, so we just continue on. And this will take us back to the income screen. We have a Social Security statement we have to put in there too. And this is also in the same general area where you found the 1099-R. Under IRA pensions distributions, it's the third item down, Social Security benefits. So if we click and go in there, and on page 88 is the Social Security statement for Faith. And there are 3 numbers that we need to enter in under spouse's information down at the bottom here. The first number is the number in box 5, and in your test book, it's missing. They just forgot to put that in there, but it's the same amount as in box 3, so that's 23899. Then in box 6, she had federal income tax withheld from her Social Security of $23.90. Then on the left-hand side, you'll see her Medicare premiums that were deducted from the benefits of $20.96. So those three numbers are in there. We can just continue on now. And so do we have any other items of income? If you look back at the interview notes, we see the fourth bullet point down that Vincent received a Form 1099-C for canceled debt. We're going to have to put that in. And we also have jury duty income for Faith. So let's address both of those items. Let me go back to income here. The income section. And let's scroll down to the very last item, other income. Let's go in there. And let's go down and do the 1099-C first, the cancellation of debt. And this form is on page 88, and it belongs to the taxpayer. We just have to put in the creditor's name, tax ID number, and the amount that was canceled, the $850. That's all we have to do for that. And if we go back to this less common income screen, the very top item, other income, that's where we will put in our jury duty pay. And this belongs to the spouse. And under the description, there's a drop-down list where you can find jury duty pay along with a lot of other items. And that was $280. So I believe that is all we have to do for income. Let us move on to the next section here, the deductions section. And the first item under adjustments, we have in the interview notes, the second bullet point, Vincent worked 1,800 hours at school in 2024, and he spent $844 on classroom expenses. So we need to go in and give him his little tax break for that. And it's the second item down, educator expenses. Now, this is capped at $300, so that's all we can put in there for him, even though he spent more than that. So we do that. Then we have one more deduction that we need to deal with. And let me get back to the deduction screen here. So Hope was in college. In the interview notes, it says that she is a sophomore pursuing a degree in physics, and she received a Form 1098-T from her school. So we need to put this form in and also include the additional qualified expenses that she paid for her textbooks. So under deductions, we're going to go down to credits, and we're going to go in here, and we're going to go down to education credits, and we're going to go in, and the first thing it's going to ask you, did the student receive a Form 1098-T from the educational institution? Yes, she did. And the next question is usually going to be a no. And that just has to do with expenses that were paid in one year that apply to a different year. So we're just going to check that no. And on the next screen, we're going to put in the information for the school she attended, which was Clark Community College, their address, their tax ID number that is on the Form 1098-T. They're on page 89, and we can continue on. And then we need to put in three items on the next screen. The tuition paid is the amount in box 1 on that form, which is $57.22. Then in box 5, we have scholarships and grants of $32.02. And we also have her textbook expenses that you will see on page 90 on that statement of account from the school, that $1,500. So those three items are in there. As a reminder, the parking pass does not count, so we do not add that into qualified expenses. And we continue on here. Finally, tax layer is going to present us with the screening questions for the American Opportunity Tax Credit. So the first question is, has this credit been claimed on 4 prior tax returns? No. It's only allowed on 4 returns, then you don't get the credit anymore. Second question, was she enrolled at least half-time? We know from looking at the Form 1098T that she was at least a half-time student. That's the checkbox in box 8. The next question, did she complete the first 4 years of higher education before 2024? No, she did not. And was she convicted of a felony drug conviction before the end of 2024? No. So those are the screening questions that will qualify her for the American Opportunity Tax Credit, which is worth $2,500, and we will see that on her final tax return when we pull up the PDF of that. For now, we can just click Continue. And let's see, is there anything else that we need to do for this return? I believe that is everything. So let's just continue on. I'm going to click the Continue button a few times here. And it's going to ask us the health insurance question. So, and this is on the intake form. They moved it because we have a brand new redesigned intake form this year. But there's a question, did the taxpayers purchase insurance from healthcare.gov? If so, they would have received a Form 1095A, but they did not. So we will just check that no and continue on. We will not be going into the state return. It's not available. This takes us to the tax return summary screen. And I'm going to come back here in a second, but there's one more thing that we would normally do when preparing a return is we would put in their bank account information for direct deposit. So let's continue on here to the e-file section. Just going to remind you where that's at. And I'm going to ignore the warning that pops up. And it's going to ask, how would the client like to send their tax return? We're going to choose e-file direct deposit. We're going to continue on. We're going to continue on. And here is where we are going to enter the information that is on that voided check on page 90. I'm not going to put that in right now. Well, actually, maybe I should, just to show you how the refund pulls here. So this is New Bank, and the routing number at the bottom of the check, it's a 9-digit number. And it's going to make you type this twice as a verification check. Then it's going to take you over to deposit amount. Just click the pull refund button and it will pull that refund amount into the field. And then our bank account number, we just enter that twice. And continue on. If you made a typo, you'll get an error telling you to go back and check. A routing number does not match. Looks like I left out a 0. So then it will take you to the optional questions that are on at the end of the intake form. We're not going to bother with those now. I'm just going to save and return to get back to the tax return summary screen. I'm going to click on View Print Return and pull up the PDF of this return. because that is where we were going to find the answers to the questions on page 91. So if I click the big button here, it's going to pull up the PDF of the return. And the first thing we see is a summary of what's on the return. This is a handy document to quickly find a piece of information that you might need as you're doing a return. And if you scroll down, you will see all the tax forms we entered. You will see the e-file signature authorization that the client has to sign at the very end of the quality review, right before we transmit the return. Then we come to the 1040. So we have several questions here. The first one on page 91, it's asking, what is the taxable portion of Faith's pension? So we will find that number down here on line 5. And so that's where you will find the answer. And question 16, the hunters are eligible to claim the credit for other dependents on the tax return. So if we scroll back up a little bit, under the dependents section of the 1040, there are 2 checked boxes next to the dependent Hope. She either qualifies for the child tax credit or the credit for other dependents. So that's where we find that answer. Then question 17 is asking, what is the total amount of other income reported on Schedule 1? So Schedule 1 is the next item after the 1040. And it's asking what was the total. So if we scroll down and look at what's on line 10, that is going to be the answer to question 17. We already talked about question 18 because the educator expense deduction is capped. So we'll go on to question 19. What was their standard deduction? Let's go back up to the 1040. And you will find that answer on line 12. Then moving on to question 20, which of the following expenses qualify for the American Opportunity Credit? I mentioned that a little bit ago when we were putting in the 1098E. So we know that 2 of those are qualified expenses and 1 isn't. Question 21, what is the taxable amount of Faith's Social Security income? So let's go back to the first page and look at line 6. You will see that she had $23,899 of Social Security benefits, but not all of that is taxable. Actually, in their case, 85% is, and that's the number that we see on line 6B. Finally, the last question is, what was their federal tax withholding? And if you remembered to enter all of those in, you will find that answer on line 25D. So that's everything for scenario 7. But let me remind you about VITAresources.net under study guides, where you can find the study guide over here for all of the scenarios in the advanced test. This provides hints on how to find the answers if you're not sure about a question. And a little further down is the answer check form, where we can go in. And in this case, we are checking our answers for questions 15 through 22. So we can just scroll down to question 15. The scenario here is scenario 7. Put in the answers and then scroll all the way to the bottom and click the submit button. And then click view score, and it will tell you which of those you got correct and which you did not get correct. And it will give you a little hint on how to come up with the correct answer. So that's everything for scenario 7. If you have trouble or have any questions, reach out to one of us here at the VITA, at the FEC. And, you're always welcome to come to one of our open hours in January if you need a little help getting through some of the certification tests. So I'm going to move on and get to work on the next scenario here for you. So thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next video.